how important would you say value addition and industrialization is if the continent, which is Africa that we're talking about, is to create sustainable wealth for itself?
That's a phenomenal question. One of the prime ministers in the Middle East, he talked about being in military training, how part of the training that they would give you is to have one person. One person has somebody on their shoulders, and you engage in a race. Now, unfortunately, there was this pair that were paired up wherein there was a very slim guy at the bottom and a very fat guy on top.
Okay.
And they had to race. So you can imagine that kind
Slim
of mental
and fat.
model. Yes. The slim person is carrying the fat person in a race with other people, right? We all know that that's not going to end well for that pair. Now, in that story, you know, it points to what's happening in Africa in the sense that the fat person is the government and the slim person is the private sector.
Okay.
Right? So in a country where the cost of governance is so high, take for example Nigeria, where you know, it's funny that I say that because our politicians tend to also be very fat, but that's
Not
by
all
the
of
way.
them.
Not all of them, yes, and I digress. But the point is that when you have a public sector that is ballooned in terms of how much it is costing the people and how much it's extracting from the people, and you have a private sector that's barely surviving. Now, what are the things that a private sector needs to survive? One is power. We spoke about industrialization, which is what led us to this conversation, but we need power in order to industrialize, and that's going to be led by the private sector. The private sector is not getting power. Apart from that, we need predictable policy. That means not every 4 years does a new government come in and one bans crypto, another one unlocks crypto, and the next one comes and bans something else. And all this fluctuation creates an unpredictable environment which further strangles the private sector. And then there's also the access to capital as well. Now, for the average businessman in Nigeria, if you want to take a loan, you're looking at almost 30%. That's devastating. How are you going to make returns, right? So you have an environment wherein the private sector is kept very slim and very skinny. And that private sector is the one paying for the public sector. That's the big, fat institution. So now the private sector has to carry all that weight and try and survive. And we need to reverse that in order to trigger industrialization. The government needs to cut itself down to size. There's no reason why governors and senators should have, you know, 25 senior special assistants. They're not doing well enough to, you know, require that many special assistants, really. So we can start adding value, because who wants to build, you know, shall we say, a large-scale refinery, except for Dangote, who's willing to take that risk in Africa? Not many people want to do that, simply because it's unpredictable. And it's fantastic that we have entrepreneurs like Dangote who are willing to take that risk, you know, because a lot of foreign investors just wouldn't do that. So we need to create a structure that would allow the private industry kind of step up, industrialize the nation, and that way we can unlock that full value chain and stop exporting cocoa and start exporting Nigerian chocolate.